Oh, yeah. Ready? Ready? Ready?
Okay, we've got two meetings, so let's start with the Board of Adjustment, if we could. And have a roll call, the roll call for the Board of Adjustment, please.
Margaret Bowles. Katie Souls.
Bob Denison.
Joy McCoy.
Peggy Smith.
And one moment, and we've got
Brian Zirkvinek.
and Andy Miller, and we just called to order the Board of Adjustment.
Oh.
Okay, so, an approval of the agenda, a motion to approve the agenda, please.
So moved. Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. So on the consent agenda, we have the minutes from October 25th, 2023. And any questions about that, or did Eric have a chance to look at that in the packet?
Didn't we already approve that?
You know, there's some typos, like, let's have an explanation of that if we could real quickly.
Yeah, that was my thought. I didn't know why we were taking it up again.
Yeah, so to clarify, so what's in the consent agenda is the meeting minutes from October 25th. That meeting was simply held to approve the minutes from the September 27th meeting. So the September 27th meeting of the Board of Adjustment was where we considered the 4 height variance applications submitted by Grand Park. And the October meeting, we held that simply to approve the minutes from the September meeting. However, this meeting, we are holding to amend those September minutes. So is everyone following?
I wonder if we should flip flop.
What are
two.
the amendments? Because I couldn't tell what we were amending.
So let's make this cleaner. Let's
Okay,
have a motion. Let's have a motion to remove the minutes from the October 25th off the consent agenda, because it really needs to happen after we after we discuss the amending of the September 27th minutes.
that's fair.
I move to remove that off the consent.
Minutes for the October 25th.
Seconded.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any
Thank you.
opposed? Thank you. That'll make it a little bit cleaner. So,
Sure.
good. So let's have anything on the open forum for the Board of Adjustment. This is a separate meeting from the Planning Commission. We're just cleaning up a couple housekeeping items. We will be moving to the Planning Commission meeting as soon as we're done with this. But does anybody have anything for the Board of Adjustment? Okay. All right, let's go ahead and move to the discussion and possible action amending the minutes of September 27th Board of Adjustment special meeting.
Okay, thank you, Andy.
Yes.
So on the screen before you, these are the amended minutes for the September meeting of last year that the Board of Adjustment held. Again, this is the meeting where 4 separate variance applications were considered by the Board of Adjustment. I did share with you kind of the track changes version of this that showed what was changed previously, but just to go over it. The main thing was that just clarifying that these resolutions denied that variance request and these resolutions were approved by the board. So just making that clarification. That was the main thing. There was a couple typos. I also just wanted to note that all the votes were 5-0. The Board of Adjustment only has 5 voting members and 2 alternates. I think some of the votes were 6-0 in the minutes.
So I was the one really that presented this. I wanted to bring it back because the previous motions were to deny the resolution. So we denied the resolution that denied the applicant. So now we have 2 denials, and I think, and we look back in history and go, what really was done? So I wanted to bring this back to say, okay, actually, is the resolution was approved, and the actual resolution denied the application. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Resolution packet.
In the packet, it was like, it's like a double negative. So it was like, what did happen? We denied the resolution that denied the applicant. We should have approved the resolution that denied the applicant, if that makes sense. So to me, it was very unclear what the action was taken. We're clear because we were here, at least most of us, not all of us,
Yeah,
as to what that was happened at that meeting. But
Yeah.
I wanted the minutes to be very clear for historical purposes down the road, that there's no question as to what happened.
Yeah, that makes sense from in case it ever gets peeled or whatever.
Yeah.
Need to have it clarified.
Yeah.
It's good.
And one other point of clarification, we're supposed to have 5 members on the Board of Adjustment. There's 7 of us here.
Yes, so the Board of Adjustment consists of 5 members. That's the 4 commissioners appointed by the mayor, non-trustees, as well as the trustee appointed by the board as a whole. And then the mayor and then the trustee appointed by the mayor serve as alternate members of the Board of Adjustment.
We should technically not have votes for them in this meeting or on the alternates.
Correct. Yeah, I think just to be clean, Peggy and Brian abstained from voting on these, even though it, just voting on minutes. But
Just to make it clean. So any other questions about this? Any discussion? I'd entertain a motion. To amending the motion, to amending the minutes, the September 27th special meeting.
I would like to make a motion that we approve the amended minutes for September 27th.
2023.
Meeting from 2023.
2023.
2023, excuse me.
2023.
Seconded.
Okay, any further discussion? And from the 5 members of the Board of Adjustment, could I have a vote, please? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Now we would return to the minutes of October 25th. And just briefly cover that one last time.
Right. So if you all recall, after the September 27th meeting, we convened the Board of Adjustment in October. And the purpose of this meeting was to simply approve the minutes from the September meeting in a quick and expeditious manner, 1 month after that meeting occurred. So these are the minutes from that October 25th meeting. Roll call approval of agenda. The previous September 27th meeting minutes were approved, and then the Board of Adjustment adjourned. So that's what's reflected in these minutes.
Okay. So could I have a motion to approve the minutes from October 25th, 2023?
I make a motion to amend the minutes from October 25th, 2023.
To approve.
To approve,
Yeah.
to approve. Sorry. Too
Have a
much to
second?
remember.
Yeah.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, so any other business for the Board of Adjustment? Could I have a motion to adjourn the Board of Adjustment?
I so moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Okay. So we'll move on to the Planning Commission and have a roll call, please.
Margaret Bowles,
Katie Souls.
Ryan Cirkvenick.
Bob Canusi.
Joy McCoy.
Peggy Smith,
Andy Miller, thank you. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, so the consent agenda includes the minutes from the May 22nd, 2024 meeting. Any, could I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, so we will go to open forum for any items that are not on the agenda. We will be discussing the agenda items separately, but any items not on the agenda, any open forum items for the Planning Commission. Anybody online? Okay, appears we don't. Okay. So we would I'd call for a motion. I think this is the point to maybe discuss this, okay?
Yeah.
Before we open the public hearing. Garrett called me today and had found that we have made an, a, an error in the public notice part of this, next agenda item. And a mailing for this type of action has to be made by certified return receipt requested mail. It was mailed, but it was not mailed in the proper fashion. So there was a discussion today with legal staff and with the staff and with myself as to whether we should move ahead with this at all tonight. My feeling is that we do have members of the public here. We have members that have responded to this. We can't take any action tonight. I think that's pretty clear and, open to discussion at this point. But I think that we should at least have a presentation and discuss this. And then we will continue this public hearing to a possible discussion at the next planning commission in July. So
It's a good idea.
In August.
Okay.
The next.
in July. It's
Oh,
June.
yeah.
Yeah.
So-
Sorry.
Summer is flying by, but that's okay. Does that sound okay?
Yeah,
Sounds
sounds
good to
good.
me.
Okay. Good. Well, let's go ahead and move ahead with the motion to, we still open the public hearing.
I believe so, yes.
And keep to that same process. So,
Mhm.
so motion to open the public hearing, please.
I move to open the public hearing.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay, so we'll have a staff report.
Right. Awesome. Thank you, Andy. So the item before the Planning Commission this evening is the final plat and major site plan application for phase 1 of the Victoria Village development. Just to kind of pick up where Andy left off and maybe provide some further clarification. So, kind of because of the nature of this project being, a town-led project, but working with a consultant partner, Mountain Affordable Housing Development, on the design and, pre-construction approval process. Typically that mailed notice is the responsibility of the applicant. However, the applicant is working on behalf of the town directly. There was some correspondence leading up to the 2-week public notice date, June 12th, in advance of this meeting, where the town staff indicated to the applicant that we could handle that public notice. That wouldn't be an issue. Because again, it's a process. However, as Andy mentioned, those mailed notices were not sent via certified mail with return receipts, which does not meet our requirements of town code. So in this scenario, when proper public notice is not required, the Planning Commission has the option to either deny the application or continue the application, continue the public hearing. So staff is requesting that we continue this hearing to a date in July. As Andy mentioned, we did receive a couple phone calls and emails and letters. So certainly folks did receive those mailed notices. We have folks here in the audience this evening as well. But again, the fact that we didn't provide it via certified mail with return receipts per our town code, just to follow the letter of our code, any approval action should not be taken this evening. So the way I've structured this presentation is actually really to respond to some of the questions and concerns raised by the letters that I received. The staff report that's in the packet is certainly available for all of your review, as well as review by the public, which is helps justify and explain why staff recommended approval, which again is not being considered today. However, I just wanted to, I think, really just speak to the questions and concerns that I had received, and then allow for public comment from the folks here in the room, as well as those online. So I received a letter from Randall Poet. He owns property at the Twin Rivers condos adjacent to Victoria Village. I have kind of paraphrased his questions and comments up on the slides, and I'll just kind of go through them in order. So his first comment had to do with concerns regarding changes to water flows in St. Louis Creek and the Fraser River, and just wants assurances that the development of Victoria Village will have no effect on the water volume in either of these bodies of water. So The applicant is working with the Army Corps of Engineers as well as the Colorado Water Conservation Board to obtain all required and necessary permits. One other thing that I would reference is attachment 7 that's in the packet, the hydraulic report. It shows that phase 1 of the project will not cause a rise in the base flood elevations of St. Louis Creek. And, if St. Louis Creek is not being impacted, then the Fraser River isn't either. I also just wanted to note that, with the overall site work to be accomplished through both phase 1 and phase 2, the applicant, the project team also includes an environmental engineer that is, working to include several site improvements that will improve the overall stability of the banks of St. Louis Creek, help prevent erosion as well as improve fish habitat. I also want to mention that we have Kevin from JVA here in the audience, as well as a couple of folks from the applicant team online. So if they have a desire to clarify or add to anything I'm speaking to, I more than welcome them to raise their hand or come up to the podium. The second comment was with regards to vehicular access, specifically access from Building E, utilizing Sterling Way, which is the private road through Twin Rivers condos to access County Road 8. There is a question whether, could that access driveway be redesigned to prevent site traffic from going through the Twin Rivers condos? And maybe I'll just show this picture here for reference. So Building E is at the bottom right-hand corner of the site, the southeast corner. Right on that corner, there's this access driveway. This currently exists. It's on the Victoria Village property. And it's currently being used to access this Winter Park West Water Department building, as well as secondary access to the Twin Rivers condos to the north. The concern raised was that this access is also now going to serve Building E of Victoria Village as proposed on the site plan. And, that access directly aligns with the existing access in the Twin Rivers. So the concern is that Victoria Village site traffic may utilize Twin Rivers to get to County Road 8 and then ultimately Highway 40. Staff's response to this is that, existing access is intended to be platted as a public right-of-way. And it's also consistent with the approved master plan for Victoria Village that was approved by the Board of Trustees last year in 2023. It may be possible to redesign this access to discourage traffic through Twin Rivers, but I don't think it would be possible to completely prohibit Victoria Village traffic from going through there without prohibiting all traffic, essentially. So, one other thing that I wanted to note is that, I do think that cut through traffic through the Twin Rivers condos is fairly unlikely. The shortest path to Highway 40 is via Park Avenue, as well as the path that would go via Park Avenue north on Victoria Village and then to County Road 8. That's also a shorter path than going through Twin Rivers to County Road 8. It's roughly the same. It's a little bit shorter to go through Victoria Village Way. So, for that reason, I think I understand and I recognize the concerns with that cut through traffic, but I do think it's unlikely to occur once the site is developed.
I think it should be noted too, though, that the road through Victoria Village won't be complete with its first phase, but that is the goal, is to complete it through to County Road 8. And that's to help alleviate some of the existing cut through traffic that's happening even now. So I think that's been a goal through the whole project, is to create an alternative route from this neighborhood over to County Road 8. So it does not have to cut through Twin Rivers. So
right, that is a goal of this project overall, to provide an additional collector road north-south between Park Ave and County Road 8. I do see Todd has his hand raised, so I'll let him maybe add to this. But so the site plan as currently shown in the packet does not include the entirety of Victoria Village Way in phase 1. However, if you look at the referral review comments that are in the packet as attachment 17, the town is requested, I would maybe even say require, that this road be completed with phase one of the development. There is kind of a quirk in the timing with regards to Army Corps of Engineers permits for that bridge crossing over St. Louis Creek. But effectively, the intention is to have the entirety of Victoria Village Way constructed by the time those buildings have, say, certificates of occupancy. Does that make sense?
It's just,
What kind of assurances do we have that that's going to happen?
Well, I think, we could have that as a condition of approval, certainly. One of the things that they've already updated on their resubmitted plats and plans is dedicating the entirety of the right-of-way for Victoria Village Way with this phase one application. If that makes sense. So, yes, dedicating it as public right-of-way. And again, I think the timing of the Army Corps permit is maybe less certain in relation to the timing of starting construction on this phase one, building C, D, and E. But I do believe that that permit would likely be approved and in hand by the time, these buildings are reaching certificates of occupancy. If
the
that makes
permits
sense.
for the bridge, basically.
Right.
across the
Right.
creek, so.
So it's not a money issue, it's a permit timing issue. It's not
Yes.
in terms of completing that road through. 'Cause
Right. Yes.
That was one of my questions, is I wanted to understand, had we already gotten the Corps of Engineers approval to cross that wetland and the creek? Because without that, you're dead in the water. And the way I read the certificate, we were explicitly saying that the construction of the road all the way to County Road 8 was part of this first phase that we're now approving or being asked to approve.
Yes, so I believe that's all correct, that so the permit is not approved as of today, and that the request is that the entirety of that road be included in phase one. I mean, I think maybe a way to think about it is kind of a phase 1A, 1B, if you will, where it's included in phase one, but the timing of the construction is subject to the permit approval by the Army Corps.
Is there any chance that the Army Corps will not approve it? Is there a chance?
I think that's highly unlikely that it would not be approved. But I would maybe welcome the applicant to speak to that.
Yeah, I would be interested in seeing what
Sure.
the issues are with
So,
that.
so Margaret, I've been pretty closely involved in the permitting. Grand Environmental Services has been working on this, and I've been out on the ground quite a bit. And basically, the sensitive part of this whole site's been disturbed.
Yeah,
There was a conservation easement put through the property by the previous developer that gave them the authority to do a lot of filling. And the disturbed area, the only area that's not tremendously disturbed, although I'm sure that at one time or another, the stream was straightened. I mean, anyway, the only area that can be considered sensitive that the Corps is focused on is below the bridge towards the Fraser River. And if you go out on the ground, you can see that too, that really that stretch from where the bridge is going to be. And that's why the bridge has been moved so far to the west, because originally it was going to be farther down towards the Fraser River, but we recognized early on that there was a lot more sensitivity to that woodlot and that area that really has come back really nicely over the years. So that's why the bridge has been bumped up closer to Highway 40, is to stay out of that. So it's just it's a long process, and I think the town would be safe in guaranteeing that this was done before the certificates of occupancy were, or that the road was done and the bridge was at least permitted and funded before COs are granted for these buildings. So
I had a question, similar in nature, but not the same. I saw in the amount of voluminous documents we were provided, it looks like the applicant applied for a variance to not have detention ponds on the project during construction or even post-construction. And they're going to use a method that is kind of like let it go and, beat the crest of the Fraser River by discharging whatever comes down St. Louis Creek.
that's a separate issue, and I think we should
I know it's a separate
we
issue.
should have
I'm just-
JVA talk to us about this, because confused by that as well.
I'm
Bob,
just
so,
asking
yeah.
if that's been approved.
Yeah.
Because we've never heard about it till now.
Well,
Sure.
we haven't approved, nothing's been approved here, but anyway,
I mean, I guess I can briefly speak to that and maybe if Paul would like to chime in as well. And folks online from either Todd or Sam from JVA, but that is I would describe as a fairly typical request, especially for sites adjacent to either the Fraser River or a tributary like St. Louis Creek or Elk Creek. It is a variance on the stormwater quantity, not the quality. And the purpose of that is effectively, the peak flow within St. Louis Creek is going to be different from the peak flow of runoff from the site. So essentially for large storm events, peak flows would be allowed to not necessarily be detained, but just flow into St. Louis Creek. So that's my,
It's not right into the creek. It's into the wetlands adjacent to the creek, right? Where the willows are. That was my impression. Paul, you're on.
So either myself or Sam, but so it'll still be treated. So it's going to go through the treatment process before it's discharged. But because it discharges into the wetlands or you're discharging into a creek, if the creek rises before you have held the detention, then the water can't get out. Because the creek, so you treat the water. We've done these. So we gave that same variance was given to the Strom Townhomes because it's right adjacent to the Fraser. So this same request, you guys just approved for the Strom Townhomes, and Merrick, our engineer, is in agreement that provide quality, but that the quantity can be waived.
Okay. Well, the quality part of it wasn't addressed in the document I looked at.
So the quality is in there. It's when you see they have contact boxes. They're just going to treat the water before. So everything's going to go to this contact box that'll then be serviced just like what happened on Coes Lake. Same idea. And then it'll be treated and then it's discharged out to the wetland area.
I can speak on that a little bit more if you guys like me to.
please do, Sam.
Yeah, it's Sam Redfield, JVA. And yeah, you're correct. It's the same stormwater detention variance that we got on Strom Townhomes and is typically granted up and down the Fraser River corridor. It's to make it so the peak flows from each of these sites don't coincide with the peak flow from the overall Fraser River watershed, thus exacerbating any flooding that would happen during a 100-year storm. And and the idea is that if we allow our peak flows to pass before the peak flow of the overall storm, overall watershed, that it will be beneficial to all the downstream neighbors in the corridor directly adjacent to the Fraser River there. And also our strategy for water quality is a little bit different than the Coast Lake project. So these are contact hydrodynamic separators. They're pretty typical. They're used in a lot of different applications, but they're basically a manhole that has functioning design inside of it that removes all of the suspended solids and all of the sediment from stormwater during a water quality event called a first flush, basically. And then allows during a larger event like a 100-year storm, after that first flush, the bypass flow of the 100-year storm would be able to bypass that manhole and flow out and discharge to our 2 discharge points. Yeah, so as Paul said, we will be getting our full water quality requirement. The only variance that has been recommended approved by Merrick would be the detention requirement.
Okay. And that I understood all that. Don't have any complaints or any disagreements with that approach. My main concern was, had this variance already been granted, and if so, by the Board of Trustees, and if not, then is the variance a condition of us approving this?
So I would say typically that the variance request is received, it's reviewed by town staff and Merrick. Merrick has already indicated that they are supportive of that variance being approved. I guess it's not necessarily formally approved until the planning commission and board approve the site plan and plat documents. I would maybe
It's not
say.
a condition on our certificate.
No, I don't think we generally have that as like a condition of approval.
And it's not a Board of
Wow.
Adjustment variance.
No,
Oh,
it's
That's a
but
good point.
it's a variance under chapter 14, not chapter 19 of our code. So chapter 14 deals with, construction standards. Chapter 19 is the land development code. So maybe it's confusing that it's also called a variance where it's a completely separate process.
Does it work in conjunction to the snow storage removal plan that is a condition of the final plat?
It, I would say in this case, no, it's not necessarily a condition of approval. Similar to the snow storage plan. I would say it's maybe a slightly different approval mechanism, but it's still not formally approved until I guess I should reference the stormwater quantity variance is not formally approved until the site plan and plat are officially approved by the board. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that word variance is what everybody's stumbling over. It's probably not the best word to use for this process. so-
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah. Any further questions or discussion on this? Okay. So the third question from
Excuse me,
Randall
Garrett.
was, oh, Todd, go ahead. Yes.
Yep, excuse me, Garrett and commissioners, good evening. Just a couple of points of clarification on that prior comment when we were talking about access road through that shared drive that's east of Building E. So the key concern here is to provide access for East Grand Fire on all sides of the building. And they would not want to have to drive around, past the fire if there was, God forbid, there was one in Building E, and go up and around and come back down the other side of the parking lot. So they really want us to have those 2 points of access on each side of Building E, and that shared drive or whatever you'd like to call it provides that. And we've added an additional hydrant specifically in part of the curb area northeast of Building E, specifically in favor of improving firefighting conditions. So they greatly prefer having those 2 points of access to be able to get equipment on either side of Building E without having to drive past the fire.
Thank you, Todd. Any further questions or comments on this?
And are we clear on the bridge and the north-south right of way all being part of phase one? I think that the only thing I'd want to clarify is that not everything in phase one will start construction within the same calendar year. So just because it's in the same phase doesn't mean it's all going to be built in, say, 2024. There's going to be phase one activity that starts construction in 2025. It's a delineation that it's a priority and it's meant to come first, not necessarily that everything gets started all at once. But we concur that it's we understand and we are planning to put the entirety of the north-south thoroughfare and the bridge crossing with phase one. So thank you.
I was just gonna speak again about the variance. Chapter 14 variances are administrative variances that are granted by the town manager, and an appeal to those goes to the Board of Trustees. So these aren't Chapter 19 land use. It's just anything in Chapter 14 is administrative variance that's approved by the town manager. And if the applicant doesn't like it, then they appeal to the Board of Trustees.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, so the third comment or concern was with regards to the turn, specifically the left turn from Park Avenue onto US 40 heading southbound. It's already fairly difficult or congested at times. So the question was, what improvements are being proposed for the additional traffic being added to this intersection? So first, certainly the applicant is working with CDOT to obtain, required access permits. They've produced a traffic impact study, that's attachment 10 in the packet. One thing I do want to note is that traffic impacts were evaluated for the project as a whole, and not on a by phase basis. So it doesn't look at, well, when we build phase 1, what are the traffic impacts? When we build the whole site, what's the impact? So I maybe just keep that in mind when reviewing that traffic impact study, that it looks at the site as a whole. So certainly with just phase 1, those impacts will be less than shown in the report, as well as that's another reason why staff is requiring that Victoria Village Way be completed, so that even the impacts of phase 1 are spread between the County Road 8 and the Park Avenue intersections. Couple other things I want to just talk through. So if you all recall from around 2019, 2020, CDOT did this planning study and conceptual design for capacity improvements to Highway 40 through Fraser. They currently have an RFP out to finalize the design and construction documents for those improvements. Those designs will likely be completed next year. And what's shown in the conceptual plans is a traffic signal at County Road 8. So I think the timing of the construction is still uncertain. It's likely 2026 at the earliest, I would say. But traffic signal at County Road 8, that would also improve the operations at Park Avenue. With the traffic signal, you have more gaps created and kind of a platooning effect in traffic. So there's also a traffic signal plan to the south at Eisenhower and Highway 40. So again, the timing of those improvements is kind of a 2026 plus timing, but I think it's possible that they could be complete by the time phase 2 of the site is developed. And I think the TIS, the traffic impact study, shows that phase 1 certainly wouldn't overly degrade intersection operations.
I have a comment about that because since I live at the end of Park Avenue, I mean, even this morning, I was trying to make a right-hand turn and I got behind a truck that was taking up the entire lane. So I had to sit for at least 5 minutes to make a right-hand turn.
Wow.
So my question is, could you not, at least with regard to Park Avenue, at least put turn lane in there so that people who want to turn right don't have to sit and wait? Is that possible? And also that post office entrance right there, it creates so much, that's where everybody goes to the post office. They turn left onto Park Avenue and then they come out and turn. So is there a way to close off that entrance to the post office and force everybody that's going to the post office to go on down past and then make a left turn and not turn in off Park Avenue? Just some thoughts that I had that might improve, at least somewhat improve. The other problem is if you do want to make a left-hand turn onto US 40, the location of the pedestrian crossing makes it very, very difficult to move into that lane and wait for an opening, so it's just some thoughts and looking at that intersection and dealing with it every
part.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very difficult. It is now and during the summer, it's regardless of what the traffic study says, in practicality, it's a problem. And
Sure.
it will be a problem because people are going to use that. It's the closest. So anyway, those are some thoughts I had about that we need some improvements to Park Avenue.
Sure. So I guess going back to the first point of just simply striping a dedicated left and right hand turn, I don't know off the top of my head how much pavement is out there, what the pavement width is on that approach, but I think it's likely that there's ample room to just simply stripe those lanes. And if there is that pavement width, that would be a quick, easy thing to do, this summer, for example.
Kind of gravel on the right.
Yeah, it's
they're in
gravel.
front.
I had to
That's
go on,
Probably our property now.
yeah, I had to go onto the dirt. I actually went onto the dirt.
Right. I think the paved width is certainly narrower than the right of way width for Park Avenue. But it,
Something.
yeah. And then as far as, reconfiguring accesses to the post office, I, I think it is challenging when you're talking about taking away, you were mentioning like taking away the post office's access directly onto 40 or,
No, the one onto Park Avenue.
okay,
That's where the conflicts come
sure.
all the time.
So to require people to use the Highway 40
Right,
access into the
right.
post office. Yeah, so it's a town right of way. So I believe the town has the authority to remove that access. I certainly think that, is kind of it's a difficult thing to do. I certainly think that would not make, generally speaking, that doesn't make property owners happy. But if it's in support of improving traffic flows and, reducing conflicts and things like that, increasing safety, maybe we could identify a solution.
Well, we'll feel better when CDOT finalizes the plan for 4 lanes through Fraser.
So like Winter Park has before you enter the town, coming from the ski area, having a speedometer, a gauge that just tells people, hey, you're going 45 miles per hour in this particular zone before you get to the post office, even toward County Road 8 would be helpful because when people see the post office, they rev up and out of town, and that's why it's hard to make a left turn from County Road 8 because people are going at least 50 miles an hour, a lot of times trying to turn left or right from that intersection. But a speedometer really does the trick when people are coming into town into Winter Park, and while construction especially is happening. It'd be good. That'd be a solution.
I would just say that's Grand County. Anything north of County Road 8 is Grand County. So Fraser wouldn't have, we'd have to get the county to request CDOT to put a speedometer in there.
Okay.
So County Road 8 is, the center line of County Road 8 is the town boundary.
Yes, so I'm talking about on the other side of the post office, toward Safeway.
Safeway side.
Yep.
And then to the driveway entrance, it's all curb and gutter except for a very small section. So you'd be removing their one full access point. The other point is an alley easement that goes back to Tilly's. So that entrance is partially on the post office and then partially on Black Tie. So it's a shared access right there. So if you close the Park Avenue, you're closing one of their full accesses into the post office in that building. Because everything from the corner back to kind of Black Tie is raised curb. So there's not an entrance there.
So Brian, you're still serving with TPR, right?
Yep.
So it seems like a lot of this is going to come clear and become a big community discussion as we look at the plans for the proposed plans for US 40. correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been actually trying to dig around and find the old plan, but yeah, they're updating it this fall. So there'll be plenty of community input in that. So we'll be able to just talk about that kind of stuff. Obviously, if it's an entrance off of 40, that's not them, but maybe we make the other entrance from 40 wider or something along those lines.
I think it's possible if you remove the parallel parking that's along 40 there in front of the post office and have them create an entrance there, maybe. But the original plans had Park realigning, taking property from a Victoria's Village to line it up with Park across Highway 40,
Yeah.
which obviously conflicts with our project. So.
Okay, well, this is a priority for sure to look at how this traffic's going to work. So, okay.
The next comment that was raised had to do with snow storage and clearing snow. it was noted that a large portion of the snow storage areas identified in phase one are located on areas designated for phase two of the development. And this person also mentioned that it would seem reasonable that the protected natural areas would not be used for snow storage. So just in response to that, yes, snow storage for phase one is proposed on areas that would be developed in phase two. Staff is ultimately agreeable to this. If you think about what are the consequences of, kind of when you have a phase development, and let's say only the first phase gets built and phase two or subsequent phases never get built. What are the consequences of that happening? And here, I mean, the consequences are fairly minimal, if even non-existent. If phase two never gets built, then, those areas can and probably should be allowed to be used as snow storage. However, with the site being developed in phase two, obviously those snow storage areas would need to be relocated. So we had a comment in the referral review that we would require a snow storage plan for the fully developed site. Staff is ultimately fine with that being shown in the phase two application where those other snow storage areas are. Just preliminarily speaking, I know a primary snow storage area was identified up kind of in this triangular area to the northwest of the protected natural area boundary. I haven't, staff has not reviewed whether this is adequate snow storage area, but certainly it's a significant area that is not going to be developed and could certainly serve as snow storage for the entire site.
It's the natural gas pipeline through there, so it can't be built on.
Gotcha. And then to the second part of that question, so no snow storage is allowed within the protected natural area, as well as on or within 25 feet of wetlands, or within 30 feet of the high water mark of the St. Louis Creek, and this is per town code. So, in their site plan, they showed some snow storage areas kind of within that 25 feet of wetlands, but we provided that comment, and they should be moved on their resubmittal. The next set of questions I received from Steve Miller, who
So I need to make a disclaimer here. This is my older brother. So he does own a unit in Twin Rivers. I do not have any interest in that unit. So
gotcha.
It's not the musician.
Well, thank you, Andy. Yes. So this letter was received just yesterday. So here are the following comments from Steve. So the project appears to be quite dense. What is the average unit size? How high will these buildings be when constructed? How will they affect the view lines currently enjoyed by those in Twin Rivers? In response to that, so this table has the approximate square footage of the various unit types. This is based on the floor plans provided in the site plan, as well as presentation that Mountain Affordable Housing Development gave to the Board of Trustees back in May. So, they range from 400-ish for a studio up to around 1,200 square feet for the 3-bedroom units. The project is, I would say, quite dense. Density is how we achieve affordability. The overall density of phase one is 32.3 units per acre. This doesn't include area for the right-of-way for the road. It just includes the developed lots. The allowed density in the Victoria Village zone is 40 units per acre. So they're still fairly well below that at 32.3. Maximum height in the Victoria Village zone is 55 feet. And the proposed building heights are as follows, 54 and 51 feet. So again, that maximum height of 55 is what allows, again, greater density, a 4th story on these buildings. And the trade-off is, yes, there will be some impact to views, particularly for those in Twin Rivers that have that westward facing view. We don't have any, renderings or 3D masses of these buildings and where they're located on the site and how they specifically impact those views. But I mean, the reality is, no matter what gets built there, it's a vacant property, any level of development, regardless of what it is was going to impact those views. So
So as you review on the plat though, there is a fairly good setback between Twin Rivers and this.
yeah, I mean, so I guess looking at the buildings in phase one, just kind of eyeballing like building E on the bottom right, its distance to the Twin Rivers condos. I mean, that's 100+ feet at least.
And the other
And
buildings
then
are,
the open space
yeah.
above it.
Correct. Yeah, there is. Yeah. And you know, in phase two to the north of that open space in between, so building E, and then you have the open space, and then above that, those are townhomes. I don't think those are going to be 55 feet tall townhomes. I think they're likely 3 stories, but yet to be designed. So
Is this the time for me to bring up the fourth story and access? Are there
Sure.
elevators in these buildings? I didn't see anything about elevators in these plans. And it seems like a fourth story without an elevator. Is a
think-
bad idea.
I think there's a lot of conversations that we need to have with MAD about that, because they also trimmed the childcare center from 10,000 square feet to 8,500 square feet, citing that they needed an ADA unit on the ground floor because there wasn't an elevator in there, even though we told them we wanted an elevator in that building. So if there's an elevator, then it should make all of the apartments ADA compliant, or at least have the ability to be. And then they could get their 10,000 square feet less the size of an elevator back.
Yeah, because I was looking at it, I thought, first I thought the height was one thing, but then when I was looking at each building having 4 stories. I don't think there's any of us in this room that wants to move our furniture up to the floor, to the kids of our groceries up to the 4th floor. And if somebody's on the 4th floor and they have a heart attack, extrication will be extremely challenging. It'll be bad enough on the 3rd floor. And it saves dollars, expands the number of units that we have. But on the other hand, it'd be sacrificing safety and quality of life by putting in those additional units on a 4th floor. So it might be just as well if we can't vote on this tonight. We can throw that out there. I don't know if this is a good time to talk about it.
yeah, and Todd, I see you have your hand raised, so please go ahead.
Yep. Good evening, everybody, again. Just to clarify, since the original floor plans had been developed, we had gone ahead and inserted an elevator into building D as in dog, as well as E as an elephant. It does have, as Garrett had mentioned, it does have some bearing on the units that are required, the unit requirements for floors 2, 3, and 4 in building E, and they will all need to be ADA accessible. And same with building D. So those will have elevators in them. We've removed the 1st floor ADA accessible studio, which was planned for that, and in favor of putting in an elevator lobby. The additional space that's freed up by not having that that studio in there is being conveyed as part of the lease to Grandkids Learning Center. So the other part of the reality is, yes, Grandkids did request 10,000 feet. They have also been involved with the programming and the space planning and the floor plan and arrangement for the Grandkids Learning Center as it's currently shown in the plans. And they were happy with the 8,000 plus square feet by taking out the studio and putting in an elevator and lobby. That will increase the square footage to Grandkids Learning Center. But having a 10,000 plus square foot footprint for building E would not physically fit within the site and allow us to get sufficient parking in there. So that's a constraint that we're working with, but even as it is with an 8,000 or 8,500 or 8,900 square foot footprint for that building, it unnecessarily increases the size of all of the residential units on buildings, floors 2, 3, and 4, more so than the same unit types in all of the other buildings. And it's specifically because of the footprint that is required by grandkids. So it means that we've got to build bigger units than what is otherwise required.
So I'm not clear, where is the childcare center?
Building E. it's level
Building E,
one.
okay. Gotcha.
So yes, the plan right now is to have elevators in D and E.
So then is C gonna be 3 stories or 4?
It's 4. But it's gonna have
Don't
a,
think that's 4 stories, I thought there used to be regulations, but apparently there's not.
I-
That requires elevators for the 4th floor,
I thought I read that somewhere too.
but I asked Dennis and he doesn't. I don't know, I think it's something we should consider. I know elevators are expensive but it's a safety and a quality of life thing. Quality of life is important that we provide housing, but for a decent quality of life. Accessing a 4th floor without an elevator.
Is the childcare play area there in the corner of the parking lot, or?
No,
So I'll address that later, but it's,
Yeah.
there's a primary one located to the north of building E, as well as a couple smaller ones on the sides,
Gotcha.
left and
Okay.
right.
Since we're talking about the plans, I noticed there's no storage anywhere. Those units are really small. And Koslik had storage on the deck, 4 foot by 6 foot. These kids are gonna be coming with skis and bikes and hauling them upstairs 4 stories is crazy, but once we solve the elevator problem, I think we need to move on to storage because we definitely need storage in those units.
so there is some storage. I mean, we fully anticipate that the balconies will be used for some of that. But in building E, the plans that have been advanced, I'll have if you will, storage closets along the hallways or internal corridors.
I think having the storage in an enclosed space, so making the decks larger by 4 feet would be a huge benefit because nobody wants to be looking at a bunch of junk stored on their decks. And people have expensive things and it's just tempting to go up and steal a really expensive mountain bike that's on display.
Well, it's not good for the mountain bike to be out in the weather all the time.
Yeah.
Cost per square foot is what we have to keep balancing too. That's a tough one.
well, and if it comes down to us having to give up a unit or 2 of housing to turn into storage. In the long run, that works it out rental wise and money, but I think that from some of the members that I've talked to on the board, that our priority is providing housing and quality with the quality of living to it also. We need to take care of these folks.
Right. Okay, great discussion.
There may be some funding to access as well, depending on the percentage of ADA compliant units or ADA accessible or ADA accessibility ready units. They're not ADA compliant, but they're ready to be reinforced walls and have an easier way than completely reconstructing a unit. It's reinforced to be ADA compliant at building. So there is a lot of funding out there, depending on the percentage of units you have that are either ADA compliant or accessibility ready.
Yeah, that's something that staff can certainly look into. Thank you. So the second comment was, will the residents be owners or renters, and is the town involved with the stewardship of the units? So all units in phase one are planned to be rental units, but ownership townhome units are planned with phase two. All of the residential units in Victoria Village, phase one and phase two, will be deed restricted to the local workforce at a range of income levels. Phase one is currently planned as range from 40% area median income up to 120%. I mean, broadly speaking, the town will be involved with the stewardship of the units. I think that's kind of pending the ultimate kind of ownership structure, but whether that's through, oversight of, verifying employment and income, or even just property management of the site. I mean, the town is going to be involved with that in some level, I have to imagine. So, but I think the specific details are yet to be determined. If that makes sense. Next comment was, how many parking spaces per unit are planned, and how will overflow parking be handled? What will prevent overflow parking into Twin Rivers? So with phase one of the development, 240 parking spaces are proposed. This is enough to serve all of the uses proposed in phase one, as well as some of the future uses in phase two. So if only phase one gets built, as shown on the site plan, the site will be overparked. It's well above meeting the minimum parking requirements. So just to go into specifics, that's one parking space for every studio or one bedroom unit, 1.5 parking spaces for every 2-bedroom unit, and then 2 parking spaces for every 3-bedroom unit. For the general commercial space that's identified in the ground floor of building D, the bottom left-hand corner of the site, that's 1 parking space for every 400 square feet. And then there are slightly different requirements for the child care facility. It has to do with, I think, the number of employees on the site, but the site plan is meeting those parking minimums and exceeding them. So for that reason, staff does not anticipate there being any overflow parking into Twin Rivers or any other existing parking areas in town.
Do you think the general public will park there to go to art festivals, etc.? What's to prevent that?
Post it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's certainly possible that, again, if only phase one gets built, or in the period when just phase one is built and nothing else, I think it's likely that there will generally be open parking spaces, given the number of spaces that are being built or proposed to be built. So, it being a town-owned property, we could certainly allow it as a public parking area potentially.
So Garrett, is the post office still possibility of moving over? And does that consider the parking for something that has a lot of traffic?
Sure. I'm not intimately aware of all the details. I mean, my understanding that it's still a possibility that the post office could be located in that building D commercial space.
It would only be it would just be an annex. They
Right.
can't move the whole operation. It's not big enough.
Yeah, go ahead, Todd.
Thank you. Just a couple notes on parking. One way to control that is to issue the residents a parking pass so that we don't have general public parking in the Victoria Village parking spaces unless, there's that much excess. So, that would be one way to control that. And the other is with respect to, sufficient parking during or after phase two. Jeff and his team are constantly analyzing the parking and making sure that what is shown in terms of the number of units and the size of the units is parkable on site. And to the extent that it can't be, then we adjust the number of units in building B and or building A and reduce those until we get to a point where they can be parked. But right now, Jeff, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that what is shown in the site plan and the overall number of dwelling units can be parked, considering all of phase 1 and phase 2.
Yeah, and bottom line, we're meeting our town requirements for parking, and we've had long discussions about town requirements for parking, and that can continue to be a discussion item, but I think that as in any applicant, we will meet the requirements of our town code, so.
Mhm.
And the permit system is something most towns have, and I'm afraid is eventually gonna have to happen here too. I mean, Twin Rivers, any project can obviously put a permit system in place on their parking,
Mhm.
so.
And then relative to the post office, yes, that conversation is still ongoing. The US Postal Service is not, I'll say nimble in that regard, but our persistence, has elevated the matter beyond the local, and we're now dealing with the Colorado, Wyoming district industrial engineers and the district manager and the facilities customer relations manager. So they are planning to send somebody to the Fraser post office to evaluate that space and the needs. And then they're going to be getting back in touch with us regarding use of the commercial space in building D, as in dog.
So both D and E ground floor have commercial space then.
Right. So D is the potential post office, just general commercial space is kind of what I called it in the staff report. Building E is the childcare facility.
Why was all this moved from the corner of 8 and 40? Sorry,
That was never part of one.
what's that?
That was never part of phase
I
1.
know, but that was I thought that was originally the place we were talking about commercial was over in that corner.
It was always in that southwest corner
Okay,
in building B, yeah.
Park Avenue and 40.
As of right now, the US Postal Service is leasing the Hillies land for where the post office currently sits. So that's why we've met with such barriers of, getting an automatic door or something put in there. So if it was actually on the town of Fraser's being leased by the US Postal Service on the town of Fraser's land, that is just a consideration that needs to be made and may make it easier to make changes
Yeah.
when necessary, or increase the size of it if our population increases, etc.
Yeah. The next comment was, will there be a perimeter fence around the project, and will there be pedestrian paths that go into Twin Rivers? No, a perimeter fence is not proposed around the site, based on the site plan submitted. And then there's no direct pedestrian paths between Victoria Village and Twin Rivers. I mean, certainly via that, Sterling Way, I mean, folks could walk down that certainly, but there's really no direct pedestrian paths proposed.
so there is one path that we've discussed as a way to try and connect the Fraser River Trail with County Road 8 and with the intersection of County Road 8 and 40 would be clear over there in the corner, the northeast corner of the property. And I still have I've discussed this a little bit with the HOA board president, but it's still over a site visit to talk about this, but we do hope someday to maybe connect the county, the Fraser River Trail dead ends on the highway, right? On County Road 8.
Yeah.
At this point. And if we could bring it up along the side of County Road 8 to the intersection, and that were signalized, then we can get pedestrians all the way over to the ball fields. So, and over to the trail it's on the other side of US 40 also. So I'll try to continue that conversation, but that strictly would be at the approval of Twin Rivers. We
Gotcha.
certainly have no authority to put a trail through there unless the HOA agreed to it, so.
Yeah, and that's certainly something we can consider with phase 2 as
Right,
well,
right.
when that gets approved. Okay, next comment was, are there restrictions on the commercial development portion of the project that will protect our right to quiet enjoyment of our units? So again, just to clarify, the commercial portion of building E is the childcare, grandkids facility, and the commercial portion of building D, right now, general commercial space, again, potential post office annex. And certainly, those uses will be subject to all applicable town regulations regarding noise and disturbances, et cetera.
The daycare will be closed at night.
Right.
Might not be so peaceful during the day. They're playing outside.
Sure.
That's okay.
Yeah.
He was a child once too,
Yeah.
and I'm sure he was quite wild. Based on family history.
So the next question kind of covers a lot of things that we've already talked about, but what is the plan for site detention of stormwater and snowmelt, and how will the Twin Rivers project be affected by this detention and runoff? Is there sufficient area for snow storage and a plan for subsequent melting? So again, the applicant has provided drainage plans for review and approval. I mean, broadly speaking, no stormwater will go into the Twin Rivers site. And snow storage areas have been identified. They're adequate to serve phase 1. Again, just ensuring that they are not located on or near wetlands or the high water mark of St. Louis Creek or the protected natural area. Our code does allow for, if there are concerns around snow melt and, sediment or other contaminants discharging from that snow melt directly into, let's say, St. Louis Creek, we can request additional, measures to mitigate that. I don't believe that's a concern at this time. Next one was, what is the plan for trash safety / storage that will protect trash from animal predation and overflow? How often will the trash be picked up? So the site plan provides for 3 different trash and dumpster enclosure buildings that would serve phase 1. These enclosures must comply with Chapter 7, Article 7 of our code, as well as other provisions that protect wildlife. Those are requirements such as, the enclosure must be enclosed on all 4 sides, with doors that lock and things like that, so wildlife can't get into the building. And, trash service certainly is going to be provided by a private provider here locally, at a appropriate frequency to be determined so that there's not trash overflowing. I just wanted to highlight the elevations and kind of plan view of the trash enclosures. These have also since been revised so that the exterior materials are no longer that colored cinder block or CMU. They're going to use a siding that's matches the buildings themselves, and that's a code requirement as well. So they'll be secure facilities and they'll look nice as well. Next comment was, why is the daycare play area not adjacent to the daycare portion of the building? I think this may have just been a misunderstanding or misreading of the site plan. The play areas identified on the site plan are directly adjacent to building E, which is planned to house the daycare childcare facility. So again, looking at the left side of the screen, building E has a larger play area to the north, as well as a few smaller ones to the east and west of the building. And then those are identified on the floor plan for building E as well, specifically kind of these areas here. And this is the large one to the north over here. Last comment, will any of the site be preserved for wetlands and or open space? Simple answer, yes. So overall, the development is required to have a minimum of 35% open space per the zoning, and a significant portion of this, 23%, is going to be that protected natural area to the northeast corner of the site, adjacent to St. Louis Creek. But certainly throughout the site, there's going to be additional landscaped open space areas, you know, adjacent to buildings and parking areas. So this is the landscape plan that was provided in their site plan. So certainly phase one's going to have ample landscaped open space around the buildings, parking lot islands, parking lot perimeter, etc. So those comprise the comments that I received thus far, and that concludes what I was planning on presenting this evening.
Thank you, Garrett.
Thank you.
And overall, if I'm not mistaken, this is the most dense part of the project. Yeah, the most developable part of the project. The
Right.
rest of the project really is centered on large parts of this property that have to be left open along St. Louis Creek. So
So, and I was also wondering, I hear through the grapevine that they've had a lot of police presence over at the Mill Apartments, which is not unusual. They have 68 units, so they have 100 plus. It feels like we need to have an on-site presence that we should plan for a management office on-site on the ground floor of one of the buildings. And one thing that my sister manages a complex in Oregon, an apartment complex. And people are always coming in and asking to use like the copier, you know, and then they do have a couple of computers in there, so be able to plan ahead for an on-site management office that also had a small workspace. So if there's people there that need to get on the computer and print something else, that they can have access to that.
also there's a bit of a sense of community and has an on-site presence, like you say, that hopefully identifies problems before they become a police problem.
Right, because if there's no on-site presence, I think that it could be a
And
little
then,
more challenging.
and that'd be a live-in unit probably. I mean, somebody would trade rent and a salary for that.
Well, that would be for the manager. You wouldn't want the management office to be in the unit that they live in.
Or next to it or whatever. I mean, that's, yeah,
Yeah, it would have to be separate.
okay.
I thought there was an office in one of the buildings, like a leasing office, basically. I'm looking through now.
You've got a raised hand.
Yeah, as they talk, feel free to speak to that.
Yep. Thank you. Thanks, Garrett. Yes, right now the plan is to have an on-site management office for leasing and the like. It would be in building D as in dog, as part of that commercial space. For example, the post office, if they are going to use it as a PO box annex to put in roughly 1,000 to 1,200 additional PO boxes, they will require somewhere around 1,500 square feet. It allows another 1,500 square feet for other uses. We fully anticipate that the property manager will want to let somebody live there in as part of their compensation package, and would also have a leasing office there. So in other developments, we've seen the front area of a unit be the business office and leasing office. And then there are separate entrances for the residential or dwelling part of the unit, but they can be fully demised or they can be attached. So, but right now we're kind of showing that commercial space in building D as a core and shell space until the specific tenants are identified and committed through a term sheet.
The comments from the board? Any comments from the audience? Okay. Your name and your,
Hello, all. My name is Bob Wolf. And I've looked at the plan quite extensively. Listening to all your comments and all the questions that Garrett has answered here tonight has answered some of them that I think a lot of the people have come up with here right now. I know the project's going to be built. It's that's a foregone conclusion. It has to be built, and that's where the town is heading. But we need to make sure that we're taking care of everybody else that's living in town, and for the traffic and all other aspects of what goes on in town here right now. So it's great to hear that that they're working with the post office. I think that's a grand idea. I mean, it was also thought about moving the post office back on that lot. I don't know if Chris Ellison will ever do that, but that's another possibility. That if they move that annex over, maybe we can do something with that property at the same time. As I was listening to a couple things here, that my first one is on the traffic. Park Avenue is not meant to be the end all feeder of the development. I think that it's not built for it. As I read your traffic study, I mean, they're talking over 2,000 trips a day on it, and it just won't handle that. As Garrett was talking, if you're talking about people coming out of that, and phase 1, phase 2, I would recommend that to eliminate a lot of issues for the next mailing is to label that as phase 1, because that's a big question.
Label what as phase 1?
The road extension over to County Road 8 as phase 1. That's going to be part of the permit process, and that's going to be built, because ultimately that's got to go in. Any development I've ever been involved in, we build roads first. We don't come back and build the roads afterwards and see what's going to happen. We don't build it and see if they'll come. They're going to come. They're already coming. I think the traffic study is a little flawed that was done here. Not a little, I'd say big time. To study traffic on October 5th on a Thursday is not really the smartest thing in the world as you look at the traffic out there in today's world. The 220 traffic study, I think is flawed also. That was during COVID, where we had no traffic. And now we're finding that everybody's traveling now. You travel in the airports, you travel on the highways. It is bumper to bumper going from Granby to here every day. When you come out on Park Avenue, it's a steady stream coming up. And you will wait there a long time to make that left-hand turn. It's already, I mean, I look at the rates that they had here on their loss of level of service, and currently at 2026, they're already saying that County Road 8 is a F. So, I mean, it's something that has to be done already. I mean, I don't know how much farther we can go besides failing. And there's a couple of, if you read these things correctly, there's just some issues that need to be really resolved before a lot of this is done. It was talked about the speed coming through Fraser. There's not a speed limit sign. Once you come around the corner from the Safeway, there's no speed limit sign that I've seen anymore. They come around that corner, that's the last corner on the Indy 500 right there. And they start hitting the straightaway heading towards Tabernash. So there used to be the policeman down there at the end of town always, but that doesn't happen anymore either. So it makes it tough when they're coming at 50 and 60 miles an hour. There is no speed limit for the last part of town right there, it seems like. And maybe the digital display will help. But we can only hope. As brought up earlier, the pedestrian crossover at the end of town, it was good. It was there, planned at that point in time before all this came on board. It might behoove us to move that up more closer to the hardware store where they can cut across there. Because, you know, if Park Avenue is going to have a stoplight right there, that's going to become your pedestrian crossing.
It's not
That-
that.
Not a park.
Well, not Park Avenue, but you were talking, did you,
County Road
And-
8.
on County Road 8, but
And I-
nonetheless, you know, it does make it difficult to get out there and merge in with traffic. You have to bull yourself out there, especially on weekends. You know, unless you live there like we all do here, you don't get to experience it like we do. And good idea on the storage on the balconies. You know, that's what happens in any rental condominium. When you go around in Denver or whatever, you see all the bicycles and all the items out there on the decks. And it just doesn't look very good in the end run.
Bob, normally we have a 3-minute limit. Could you,
Pardon?
we normally have a 3-minute limit. If you could wrap it up, I'd
Okay,
appreciate it. Thank
okay.
you, sir.
Well, parking on Park Avenue, is that gonna go away? I mean, there's parking that there are now that people are using it. We have a moving truck that's been there for the last year permanently. So we ought to try and think about that. Just traffic up and down Park Avenue. I think that's all our biggest concerns here is the traffic, that how it's going to affect Park Avenue. They're trying to run their project and do all your building materials and supplies and everything. What's going to happen when you start digging into Park and Avenue with the utilities and closing off Park Avenue? How do we get out? When you say people aren't going to go through Twin Rivers, Garrett, you're dreaming. You know, people are going to see 20 cars in a line to get out at Park Avenue on the street. They're going to turn left and go out through Twin Rivers and out to County Road 8. Trust me. You got to outthink everybody. I mean, as we put closures up at the ski area all the time, you got to outthink where they're going to go. And just don't be thinking that you have all the answers until it happens.
Thank you, Bob.
So thanks a lot.
Tim,
Thank you.
Thank you.
or your name and where you live, please.
John Ladd, I live at Sun River. I'm the HOA president. We just had our town annual homeowners meeting on Saturday. This whole issue was brought up. I think I speak for everybody there that we're extremely concerned, exactly what Bob was just talking about, and Margaret earlier. I don't have to go through all the problems but I do want to make one comment since you made an issue of safety. Last year, I was trying to pull out of there on a summer day. I don't know which day of the week. But for whatever reason, there was lots and lots of traffic heading towards Granby. I finally found an opening, but again, as you said, with the crossing barrier, it's very difficult. You can't go out quickly and you can't go diagonally. And so I made my move to make a sharp turn to the right in the center lane there, and waiting then to merge under traffic going south. Somebody probably was around Icebox, pulled out there, trying to make a left turn, crossed all the traffic and came into the northbound lane, driving at a high rate of speed because he only had a short little distance and gap of the southbound traffic. And so as I pulled out, he wasn't there, but as soon as I got halfway across, he was coming around the other side, back side of that barrier there in the center, right towards me. He managed to swerve out of my way. I stopped, he got past, and I don't know how he didn't have a head on with somebody going south. It was miraculous. And it could have been, he was going at a fast enough rate that it could have been a fatality. So, this is real, this problem. And, you haven't commented on the daycare. Is this going to be just people at Victoria Village, or is it going to be other people in the town? That means they're going to be dropping their kids off, leaving, and then picking them up, right? The busy times when, we're going to work or people are going skiing or coming back. I think it's going to be a total zoo. And final comment is I hope we have a emergency entrance exit that we have gated off, but our second entrance for the fire up on the corner of Eastham and Doc Suzie. And I'm hoping you're going to give us permission to make that an ingress and egress to our property so we can get out there. Because, you know, as I said, I am truly concerned and it's about safety.
So is there any room for that?
Yeah, with a little adjustment, I mean, Jim and I are gonna be looking at it, but there is room just for our units. Yes, there is a width there. Because we've kept it wide enough so the fire trucks can get in there.
Because that connection would make a big difference. So
Yeah, exactly, because we could get out on Eastham and we wouldn't have that issue of the crosswalk there.
And
from
all
that
this is
distance.
really why we've worked so hard to make this other connection to County Road 8.
Mm.
So, but these north-south connections on the east side of town
Yeah.
are not good. So,
Yeah. So
some
anyway,
hard decisions. that
we will
need to
be
made.
making a request to
Yeah.
whoever it is that we have. And I hope it is treated with, you know, the seriousness that this is.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Hey there, I'm Tim Moreland. Thank the board and staff for your time tonight, but I echo the same concerns as Bob and the other neighbors. I'm down there. I operate my business out of that Sun River garage area. And that whole intersection of Park and Highway 40 has been problematic for a long time. And I agree with Bob. It's like the time period that they did that traffic study is just like, it's just not accurate at all. And I think the key to this being a successful project would be that Victoria Village Way Road and Bridge and the connection back to County Road 8, it'd be critical that that's done first before construction traffic and everything else, because it's just going to be a mess because people will cut through Twin Rivers. And I'm sure that that's something that they're not going to like at all. And actually the same, if they did open up that access through the Twin River Townhome area, that's probably something that we would want to take advantage of, but that may not be neighborly. So I just think it's huge for the success of this project that they get this village road done first over to County Road 8 and address some kind of traffic access at that intersection. One thing I'd point out, it's my understanding is, so if it's on CDOT's radar, even once they have it engineered, I think it's like tomorrow for them is 5 years. Is my understanding. So I think it's a really important sticking point to get past first. And then my final comment would be the amount of people that depend on that. I believe that the town did enhance that parking area along the north side of Park Avenue. And I think that was for the new park they built behind the distillery, which was a great idea and it was very useful. But I'm just curious if that goes away, because I know those two apartment buildings that are across from there, I know that they take advantage of that. So I think if that goes away, there could be more problems there, but that's all I do have. And I appreciate your time this evening.
I think Winter Park Lodging,
Thank you.
they use it a lot
Right.
too, that business.
Yeah.
The mural park would take a vote to change it from a park. So
Mm.
the people of Fraser would have to say.
But the parking along Park Avenue was temporary, and that becomes part of this project, I believe, doesn't it? Or
If it's on the Victoria Village plot that you're talking about, yes.
it's on the north side of Park Avenue. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
Any other comments? Thank you.
My name's Jim Bockrich. I live at Sun River Townhomes. Yeah, most things have been addressed here tonight. I'll pick up on the parking. Parking in this town is a huge issue, and everybody seems to think what everybody tells them is going to work. With the new project that just got built there along Highway 40, the mural park now is a parking lot. I don't think that was the intention of the town owning that. We just voted on that to maintain, I think, for the art center versus a development project. But if you go there now, it's just pure parking. I don't know if all the people are from the new project parking there, workers, but there's some cars there all the time. So I'm sure with this Victoria Village parking will be an issue because it seems to be that way in this end of the county. As far as Park Avenue goes, you have to, if it's a town owned street, you have to put in a left-hand turn lane and a right-hand turn lane there. I think someone said earlier, probably the pavement is what it is, but the actual town ownage on some of the dirt there is part of the town. That can be widened slightly. Simplest thing in the world to do for starters, get a left-hand turn and a right-hand turn on that. That would be huge, simple and cheap. And thirdly, I noticed County Road 8 has merge lanes and turn lanes both directions when you're coming on to Highway 40. Of course, when they built it, there was plenty of room to do that. If you look at Park Avenue, when you turn right, there's a guardrail there, but the rest of that is a huge shoulder. It is still paved right now. That could be made into a merge lane for people turning right, get up to speed with traffic and merge in. And there's really no good left-hand turn coming from Granby into Fraser to turn into the post office there and onto Park Avenue. There is no left-hand turn lane. Yeah, it's the double, you pull into the area between the double yellow stripes. That's not really an officially turn lane. So I know this is all CDOT controlled and permitted. And as somebody said, yep, you know, for them, one day is 5 years down the road. But those would be simple things to really help with the traffic flows around there. And unless you live there, you don't know. But I assume there's nobody here that lives up County Road 8, I assume, paying attention to this. Well, those people are going to be affected too in time, and they'll be in here squeaking. You can be assured of it because no one's going to like what comes down with all the traffic flow coming on. Anyway, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, that triggered a thought for me. With Victoria Village coming online, it's already annexed in. Obviously, there's no people there yet, but that will be a further stretch of Fraser downtown. And so we could, that speed limit should go down to 35.
Absolutely.
County Road 8. So, so that should help with Park Avenue at least. Doesn't necessarily help with County Road 8, but that's, yeah.
That gives us some room along the highway there too, Brian, to make these type of improvements. So,
Right.
yeah.
Right. And obviously the CDOT plan is to go 4 lanes, and it's, you know, that's where it shrinks down to 2 lanes. So, having an extra lane there would be helpful too.
So Brian, my understanding is the legislature made it possible for communities to set their own speed limits outside of their former speed studies that had to be done to see how fast people were going to set a speed limit.
Yeah, I went to CDOT about 4 years ago, and I said it's 35 is too fast through Winter Park and Fraser, and they said you have to do studies and blah 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 blah. And about 6 months ago, I brought it up again, and they just said, "Yeah, we can lower it."
Yeah, because the legislature.
Yeah, I think that's on who you talk to.
Yeah. So yeah, I would love to lower it to 30. So I'm happy to fight for that one.
And
That
we've
should
got
be an
extra
easy.
sign between Safeway and the post office. I hadn't noticed that.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you all for coming
Yeah.
and taking the time to come to this meeting. You made some great points. I think with the connector road being a priority to be built just for construction, and having a travel study for her phase at peak time winter, peak time summer, I mean, would make a lot of sense. Okay, what's the
Yeah.
what's the capacity here? And how can we keep our residents safe? So, thank you. Appreciate your input.
So I have a suggestion because I think everybody believes it's a good idea to show on the plan that the road will connect to County Road 8 as part of phase 1 and to build it as soon as possible. But, you know, the chink in that armor is the Corps of Engineers and that permit. So prior to the applicant coming back, I guess next month to present, can we get an update from the Corps of Engineers on how fast they could move on this permit? Because we can all agree that we want the road built first, but we can't build the road until the Corps of Engineers issues the permit so we can cross the river or creek.
Makes sense.
Right, well, they can start the road going to phase one, get that part in, and then they'll be ready for the bridge.
well, they
And
could,
in
but
addition, you could say on condition upon approval by the Army Corps, the construction on the bridge will commence.
Yeah, but this point of having this for construction is a really good one. This is gonna be really tough to construct this project just off Park Avenue without completely disrupting that neighborhood. So previously, we were talking as a condition before CO, but I think the public's point that we need this for construction is a really good one.
so, the applicant or perhaps the town itself could talk with the Corps of Engineers and see if we could apply some, how
The-
about it?
The
you know?
town is the applicant here.
Yeah, that is true, yes.
So
So
Right now,
maybe we need
yeah.
to,
Get it up there.
Light a
Corps of
fire.
engineers in here and explain what the problem is.
No, let's
with our
not do
community.
that. Let's,
Present concerns from the citizenry.
yeah,
Sure.
I think we just asked for Rich.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure staff can give us an update on that by next
So-
month, so.
Yeah.
Real quick, we're about, so the Army Corps is probably 6 to 8 months out, but FEMA's 12 months out. So if we say we don't do this until they have the permit to build the bridge, construction doesn't start till 25, maybe 26.
Yeah,
So, but we can
So
still.
part of the development improvement agreement is going to require surety for the construction of the bridge.
Yeah.
When it comes in. So if something were to happen, the town has surety that we can finish the road. So when the permit comes in, build it, but we're hamstrung by the Corps, which moves very slow, and FEMA, which moves even slower,
How long did you say FEMA was?
up to 12 months.
Okay, thank you.
But this summer, we will be beginning.
So the plan
beginning
right
on
now,
Infrastructure?
yeah, so the plan right now is, I mean, obviously, this is be delayed till July. But if this were to be approved, then the plan goes to the board for final site plan approval. We then either enter into a development improvement agreement with the developers, and then they can start. But until we have an approved site plan in July, probably not even first meeting in August at this point, and then that improvement agreement, nothing can happen out there. So the longer we delay it, then we start running into we were given money to buy the land and we have to break ground at a certain point. So it's not this year. So
Yeah.
it's not this year, but the longer we go, the farther we push affordable housing out and the
Yeah.
costs just keep going up.
Any other comments? We can't act on this tonight, so.
And how does everybody else feel about, a four-story building without elevators?
Oh, I think elevators are necessary, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
It's like general consensus of the board is elevators, if it's gonna be four stories.
Yeah. Who's gonna drag that poor kid with a weak knee from skiing during the day to
Right.
up to his fourth floor?
Yeah.
So, yeah, Yeah.
You got that one, Todd? Well, we throwing something at you.
okay, so a motion to continue the public hearing?
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.
You're welcome
Oh.
to stick around, but
We did miss one thing, I'm sorry. There noted in the staff review that we can't use Victoria Village.
Oh,
Could we during the next month move towards renaming this? And I would strongly suggest Eastham Village. The only possible glitch with that is that we have an Eastham Street that doesn't tie to this. But anyway, it has historical roots. I invited Sarah to do a little sleuthing in the historical office to make sure the Eastham family is above reproach, as all Fraser families, but it would sure be nice to have some roots here, so.
So it would be nice to be able to, of course, we can't make any decisions.
No, but
But
that's,
give a heads up that in general, are y'all okay with Eastham Village? To Victoria?
that was the original family that founded the town. The town was originally called Eastham. And they apparently built the first sawmill up in St. Louis Creek. So they were pioneer family here, so, and I don't believe there's any Easthams left in the community at least, so. But anyway, let's consider that and have Sarah do a little more
If we were to
investigation.
do that, I would say we would need to swap Park Avenue and Eastham Avenue names
Yeah,
so that it's actually on Eastham Avenue.
yeah, something of the sort. But anyway, let's look at that during the next month, so.
Huh.
Because Victoria Village, just to review, was just a name that the developer put it on it sometime past, so.
Yeah, I
really
think when it
doesn't-
was previously platted.
Yeah, it was Victoria Village, yeah. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have discussion of possible action in the support for Cousins Ranch open space conservation easement.
Okay. Thank you, Andy. Slow to share my screen here. Okay, so the item before you this evening is a resolution in support of the board exploring placing a conservation easement over the Cousins Ranch open space.
Part of the Cousins Ranch open space.
Yes, thank you. So just a brief overview of the discussion. I'm going to talk about the Fraser River Corridor Master Plan, what aspects of that have been implemented, why we're talking about this proposed conservation easement, current zoning and implications for the properties, and then briefly touch on the resolution. So for those of you who may not be aware, in 2017 into 2018, the town, in partnership with some consulting firms, as funded through a GOCO grant, completed this Fraser River Corridor Master Plan through the Cousins Ranch open space. It included a robust community engagement process, over 300 responses, and a series of public workshops. The result of this master plan, it identified 10 different goals, and I want to just highlight a couple of them as it relates to what we're talking about. So goal number 2 mentions protecting the land, river, and wildlife, while also increasing river access and recreational opportunities. Goal number 5 mentions developing a balance between both recreation and preservation. Goal number 6 talks about activating the Lions Pond areas to make a really vibrant, visible riverside park. And then goal number 9 also mentions reducing pedestrian and wildlife conflicts within the Cousins Ranch open space. So, ultimately, out of this whole master plan process, there was a strong desire to keep much of the Cousins Ranch open space wild, while at the same time, it was viewed as a really underutilized, nearly 120-acre open space asset right here in the heart of Fraser. So some of the things that have been implemented from that plan over the years, a pedestrian bridge over the Fraser River, kind of to the north of the Lions Ponds area. All the trails around those ponds are ADA compliant. Trees have been planted, increased cross-country ski grooming in the winter. The town has also completed what's called Marion's Loop Trail. So you can go on the trail along the Fraser River and then complete a loop, that connects the Lions Ponds to the water and sand ponds, and then down to Rendezvous Road. And then we now have bathrooms at the Lions Ponds as well. Additional things like trailhead kiosks, picnic tables, benches, and trash and recycling receptacles are also planned in the vicinity of Marion's Loop. So really a lot of the things that have been implemented are very recreation focused, specifically on activating the Lions Ponds area. And there hasn't been a ton of recent focus on kind of the conservation and preservation aspects identified in the master plan. So this comes from that master plan, and it focuses on that Lions Pond area with, the vision really activating it as a signature park. So, through the process of the master plan, it became evident that, detailed specific recreation opportunities were needed in the area. So, the town has been working towards, implementing this vision over time. What we are currently working on is in this area is a new bike park. Town staff revisited the master plan with the board of trustees kind of late summer, early fall last year, and the direction by the board was to focus on this bike park aspect that was identified in the master plan. So, at that time, around last summer, last fall, the community really came out in support of this bike park. The town did community engagement, which received over 270 responses. We had support from community partners such as the Rec District, Headwaters Trail Alliance, the Fraser Valley Mountain Bike Association. And really the goal and vision for this bike park is, not just a small bicycle playground that was identified in the master plan, but really to serve a variety of users and skills from beginner to intermediate. It was identified that this is a need in the county overall that can help serve a progression of skill building. Because, like the Trestle bike park over at the resort is really just for advanced riders and doesn't really offer that skill progression. The town has been working with American Ramp Company on the design of this bike park, as well as a community engagement piece that happened last fall. These designs, as shown on this slide, were presented in January of this year to the board. There's a few modifications, but largely this is still the vision of the bike park. But that updated design will be presented to the board during the July 17th meeting. So in talking with Colorado Parks and Wildlife in consultation for this bike park, as well as other future proposed amenities in the Lions Ponds area, it was suggested by CPW that we pursue a conservation easement for some of the remaining areas or reaches of the Cousins Ranch open space. Specifically reaches 3 through 5, which I know the text is probably a little small, but laser pointer here. Reach 3 goes from Rendezvous Road up to the southern edge of the sanitation district ponds. Reach 4 covers those ponds, and then reach 5 goes from those ponds up to the Lions Ponds, essentially. So that's kind of the core area that's been identified for conservation easement. Certainly the boundary could change as we work towards implementing that, but that was the primary area identified. And this was an area in the master plan, if I could go to the next slide, that really was identified for just trail improvements and river access points and things like that. Really not a whole lot in terms of intense recreational use. So really this is an area that was already envisioned to be left largely in a natural state with trail access and limited recreation facilities. Really pursuing a conservation easement is both in line with the master plan and helps support this vision, while also helping to ensure that critical wildlife habitat in this area is preserved in perpetuity, essentially. So attachment 2 in the packet for this item was a comment letter from CPW. They had this conservation data report. It identified as we all know, or maybe even encountered ourselves, occurrences of species such as moose, elk, and black bear within the Cousins Ranch open space. It also identified potential occurrences of critical species such as, the boreal toad, wolverine, many bird species, rare insects. It's also a high priority habitat for elk migration, production, and severe winter range. As well as high priority habitat for both aquatic sport fish and native aquatic species. And obviously the Cousins Ranch open space includes numerous wetland areas as well. So, ultimately the town views a conservation easement for these areas, so long as it still allows provisions for some recreational amenities along the trails, to really be aligned with the vision and help support, CPW's goals and conservation values as well. In talking about the zoning of this area, much of it is zoned open space. You see the area around those central ponds, the sanitation district ponds, it's actually zoned business. But the bulk of the Cousins Ranch open space, it's split into 2 parcels. The parcel boundary line is this right here. So it's 2 separate parcels. They're both zoned open space. And looking into our code, the intent of the open space district is obviously to preserve designated open space for park and recreational purposes, scenic areas and vistas, and other, areas of aesthetic or other public interest. So, generally speaking, to be zoned open space, the parcel must be either environmentally sensitive, including but not limited to wetlands, riparian areas, or other critical habitat. It could be a high hazard natural area, including but not limited to the 100-year floodplain or avalanche hazard areas. Or open space could also just be, general town parkland that provides outdoor recreation opportunities. There really aren't many uses permitted in open space. It's simply, open space and trails or parks and playgrounds. So again, providing the conservation easement over these parcels is wholly consistent with the zone. And it helps ensure that, a future, town staff, future board of trustees doesn't opt to rezone this area to something that would allow for development.
And Parks and Wildlife is requesting it.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, so ultimately, there is a resolution in the packet. We may need to renumber it technically since resolution 0601 was not considered this evening. So we might would just want to renumber that. But outside of that, staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve this resolution simply to just show that the Planning Commission supports the board exploring and pursuing this conservation easement. So
Simply that, just the board should explore it.
yeah, and I can pull up the resolution right
Yeah.
now, so it's on our screens. The language, yeah,
Yeah.
it's very broad and generic. I mean, I don't think the Planning Commission has much authority per se in this matter, but it just helps provide that additional level of support behind this. So
I just want to say it made me smile to look at this.
oh, great,
I support all of it.
perfect.
I do want to clarify one thing. Next PC meeting is on July 24th. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, yep. I appreciate that this is being considered.
I think hopefully we can.
This recommendation tonight because it's not part of the public hearing.
So I did have a walk out there with Sarah Knantonite and with Jeremy from the Land Trust. And a couple thoughts as the board looks at this is to keep some flexibility with the trail route, mainly the Fraser River Trail. We saw again, we lost parts of that during the high water. There's some opportunities in that area to move that trail. So one possible way to do this is a point-to-point trail with modifications pending approval of and we'd have to get approval from CPA and the Corps probably also to move parts of that trail. So they'd have input to it.
This is the original. On
Right, mainly down towards the Safeway end. And the other thing is that I think we need at least some language in there to help protect utility corridors we may need in the future between the towns. We've got a pump back, I think, but Paul, we've got a pump back line in there.
Yeah, the pump back line. If it runs through there, it runs right at the edge of Highway
Yeah.
40.
But anyway, some ability to work with
But I
that in
think
the
that those
future, too.
easements should already be in place.
Yeah.
So those easements should be there. The pump line extends all the way to Market Street area.
Yeah.
And then it extends through kind of, that actually goes through Victoria Village on that side of Fraser River. So
Yeah.
it stays to the west, but there's still the you have the Mountain Parks electric easements that we're looking to bury the lines there. So there are some easements in there, some water lines, some sewer line.
And there may be some need in the future.
But I think a lot of
so-
that ends up in that business section that Garrett showed, that red and the purple, where Rendezvous can still develop their lots. And then some other stuff, but I think the open space captures the essence of what we want, but like Garrett said, a future board can change that zoning. And this allows that zoning to never, like, it can't change once we put this easement on. So
Right.
Hopefully we can have some flexibility for utilities in the future. It's hard to foresee that in a forever type basis. And,
yeah,
and you're right, probably the red area, I think we ought to confer with, Grand County #1 because actually most of that property around the ponds belongs to them.
So that the easement
Yeah.
would stop before
It
there.
stops on theirs, but
Well, it would stop
yeah.
before we get to their well houses.
Yeah.
It's kind of that parcel 5 and 6
Yeah.
is kind of Lions Ponds. And so the area where we had a lot of erosion wouldn't be in here anyway.
right,
But to your point, Fraser River's gonna move where it wants to when we get
yeah, yeah.
when we get runoff like this
Mhm.
year. And if, Denver Water says, hey, we're not gonna take water again for 2 weeks, then
The beavers are down there too. also.
yeah, the
Oh,
beavers are
yeah.
down
Yeah.
there.
Anyway, just a little bit of flexibility as long as it meets the conservation nature of the property, so.
Yeah, and keep in mind, we can write in whatever we want to the conservation.
To the easement, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great idea.
Do you
I don't think-
foresee, Paul, any like major complications to utilities for it being designated as an easement?
No, we just want to make sure we have the language in there that we can service our utilities that are in there.
Okay,
Because so Victoria Village is a good example of what could happen is there's currently a raw water line and a water line that runs through that protected area that we're gonna abandon. Well, I'm just gonna our suggestion is you abandon it in place rather than dig up all the willows and the wetlands and everything.
Yeah.
Just relocate it. So that's kind of, we just want to make sure we can access it and utilize it, using trying to use Army Corps nationwide permits and not spending 6 months to get a permit to fix something. So,
Yeah.
but like Brian said, we can write in what we want and it's not super restrictive, but it just keeps it, nobody can come in there and fill the wetlands by creating wetlands down in Granby
Yeah,
per se. And so fill it in and build, 100 townhomes.
any other discussion? Entertain a motion?
I move to approve Planning Commission Resolution 20-240601.
We want to rename
Second.
that, or-
Yeah, I
That is the renamed.
Yeah, she renamed it.
yeah.
She
Yeah.
renamed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, just making sure. Any further discussion before we vote? All those in favor?
aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. This is great.
Yeah. it is good.
Okay, any other business? I'd like to bring up one thing if I could, is we've been talking a lot about speed tonight. And I hope we can pursue this 30-mile-an-hour limit. And I think at the same time, although we think 20 is slow on our town streets, it's not. It migrates to 25 and 30 really quickly. And I can't believe how people are to drive around town and see the number of signs in people's yards asking people to slow down. And if you don't spend time on the streets, just from those signs, what's going on. And 15 seems pretty pedestrian, but it invites 20 and it's more reasonable.
And from what I hear, the impacts of traffic coming off of Mill onto Nordgren
Yeah,
and Eisenhower, that people are just flying.
yeah.
Um,
And I know we've had this discussion with our police chief that we don't want to be known as a speed trap, but I think we do want to be.
Yeah,
known as
we
a
do.
speed trap.
Yeah.
It's a good thing.
Yes. So, and there's also another tool available for this that was suggested to me by Chris Bear, the county road superintendent, is cooperate with some jurisdictions and buy a speed van. And when I got home from Australia, I had a ticket waiting for me for 67 and a 60 zone. I had no idea I'd even done it. But I sent it off to him, but these speed vans, it's a flat rate ticket. It doesn't count points. It's a fairly reasonable ticket. I think it's $50 or something like that, but you move them around. And so you don't depend on the police being able to man a patrol vehicle when they could be doing other things. You can actually move these vans to different places and people don't know where they're going to be. And I don't know, I think it'd be worth looking. I think they're expensive, but we could work with Winter Park, even the county, to share a van or two of these. I think we could make a big difference in the way people drive around this town. I was going through the stop sign there by my house to Sharky's
Yeah.
a couple days ago, and I was slowing down my bike. I don't stop completely, I'll admit. A guy blew right through the stop sign and passed me in the intersection. Just didn't even slow down, even with a bicyclist, right? And I was holding my lane over too. I was trying to. And I sent a copy of this to Michael. There's a pretty cool sign I saw in Australia that shows a picture of a pedestrian and a car, and it said shared streets. And because people don't realize we don't have sidewalks. So that at least in Old Town, if we could work on this in these areas where we don't have sidewalks
Mhm.
and get the signage out that demonstrates what's going on. And I think it could make a difference for quality of life here. So,
Dead streets with 15 mph.
yeah,
off
Mhm.
the road.
yeah, yeah.
I will say I asked some police officer about those vans, and I was like, it's great because you don't have to man them. And they said, no, you do. Like there's still a person that is dealing with that. And it's not just the sending out the tickets afterwards. It's like something to do with the van while it's operating. So yeah, it didn't seem like it was yeah,
Quite a-
that it was totally automated.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's changed since then, but that was like a year ago that I had that conversation.
Yeah, Chris Smith suggested this to me a couple months ago because he was trying to get one county to move on one, but just look at it a little bit at least.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's worth looking into again. I'm
Yeah,
sure it's,
yeah,
sure AI has helped it out.
yeah.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Sure.
Could you, this is for Garrett. Garrett, can you give us a preview of what's coming up at the meeting in July?
I would love to. I do have one other business item, maybe before we get to the future agenda items,
Okay.
unless anyone else has other business. So I recently just registered for the Colorado chapter of the American Planning Association conference that's happening in Loveland, October 2nd through 4th. I think this would be a good opportunity if any planning commissioners are interested. Maybe trustees who just were at CML in Loveland, you can pass on going to Loveland twice in a year. But just trying to confirm what kind of funding we would have to support this for planning commissioners, but I do think we could at least cover something, if not like the registration costs and hotel room. And it's just, I think it would be a great conference for anyone on the planning commission. There's going to be good talks, by folks presenting on projects that are done, planning related projects throughout the state. So I think it's just a good learning and educational opportunity. So
October
October
2nd.
2nd.
yeah. So I can follow up with an email with more information and also confirm, what the town would be covering. Because I think we would cover some costs. I don't know how much, but
Great.
yeah.
I may even be able to get my organization to
Yeah.
support the cost of that, something like that.
Well, perfect. Yeah, glad to hear y'all might be interested. Yeah, so future agenda items. Currently our next planning commission meeting is scheduled for July 24th. I mean, it has been discussed in kind of the mad scramble today around the continuance of Victoria Village, whether it would be possible to hold a special meeting in July. I'm not sure if that's feasible or not, but certainly we'll discuss that in the coming weeks. So I would just plan on that coming to the board on the 24th, unless otherwise stated by staff. And certainly we will provide proper notice for whatever date that is, but most likely the 24th. Also anticipated to come before the board on the 24th is Grand Park's 1WA 2W, the Village at Grand Park application. They have since also split that into two separate applications. One that covers areas south of American Willow Drive and one that covers an area north of American Willow Drive. So just that, I'll just have that on your radar, I guess. It's a continuance of their application that we originally saw in March and then again in May. But that's going to come back as two separate applications technically.
Just one of the two applications or both?
Two separate.
It's anticipated that both would come to the planning commission in July. So, yeah.
How does that change anything
You
from
can
where
rule on one
we have
without the other.
currently made our position known?
So staff has only seen kind of part one of their application. We're still waiting part two. Part one covers areas south of American Willow. Certainly we still need to review it, but it's possible that a different recommendation could be, provided. So
Yeah. To be seen soon.
to be determined.
It's a public hearing. so-
It is, yes. So the town will, provide notice and the applicant will provide notice as well, but just so it's on your radar.
Okay. Anything else? Move to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you. Good to see you all.
Thank you all.
Thanks.